Good evening, everyone. We are here to talk about local control of the Baltimore City Police Department. My name is Dana Peterson-Moore. I am one of the co-chairs of the Local Control Advisory Board. And I'm here with Ashia Parker, our co-chair.
Good evening, everyone.
So we are here at City Hall. Anyone that wants to come in and participate live, you're welcome. The doors are open. The Local Control Advisory Board was set up by state statute during the 2021 legislative session. We have been working pretty diligently since October 2021. We've been meeting virtually. This actually is our first in-person meeting, so we are seeing each other, the members of the board, some of them for us for the first time. We're a 19-member board. We are an advisory board. We are set up to consider issues that relate to the possibility of the City of Baltimore assuming local control of the police department. We have a charter amendment, and that's really why we're here tonight, to talk about that charter process. Good?
So I'll talk a little bit about the purpose of this meeting today and what we plan to do. Before, I would like to acknowledge our committee members that are here today. So I see Mr. Mark Washington, Ms. Lydia Walker-Rodriguez, Ms. Nikki Thompson, and Ms. Natasha Mayhew, and Lauren Perez. So I am so glad that our committee members could be here with us today as we go on this journey. So thank you for joining us this evening. We're excited about our first outreach session. It is important to us that the community is involved in the work of the Local Control Advisory Board. And just a little bit about our board, just to piggyback on what our chair mentioned. The LCAB is comprised of community leadership, elected officials, and city staff. We have been working since October of 2021 to draft the charter amendment language and to research different forms of local control. In this session, we will share what the Charter Amendment H is, what our current state of control is, and how the community can be involved. After the presentation, we will have Q&A and a comment period. We are looking forward to your feedback. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Natasha Mayhew. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the City of Baltimore. I serve as staff to the committee, and I will be going through a slide deck to help everyone understand the charter amendment that's before us. Okay, so Baltimore is the only jurisdiction, only municipality in Maryland that does not control its own police department. As a result, unlike other jurisdictions whose local councils can make changes to police department policy, in Baltimore City, such changes can only be implemented by executive action of the mayor or police commissioner, or passed by the General Assembly, where elected officials who are not accountable to the city residents can alter that legislation. This also means that rather than come here to City Hall to testify in front of the council for council legislation, individuals that wish to testify on such bills would have to go down to Annapolis to do so. So now we're going to go through what happened. How did we get here? So for that, we have to go way back to the 1800s. BPD was established in 1853, and in the 1850s. The city was rocked by political turmoil where the police were used largely as pawns by the Know Nothing Party. The election of 1856 was filled with riots, death, lots of issues. So in 1860, the state of Maryland took control of the Baltimore Police Department, making it a state agency. So over the years, slowly bits of local oversight has been given back to the city. So for instance, in 1976, the mayor regained power to appoint the police commissioner. But BPD, the police department, remains a state agency. So we fast forward to more recently, where there's been this consistent push to fully return control of BPD to the city. In 2017, legislation was introduced by Delegate Talmadge Branch. It did not get traction, was ultimately withdrawn. In 2019, legislation was introduced by Delegate Kurt Anderson. It passed the House, but it died in the Senate. In 2021, Mayor Brandon Scott, in partnership with Senator Cory McCray and Delegate Melissa Wells, introduced legislation to return BPD to the city. That legislation passed. The passage of the legislation represents the culmination of decades of advocacy and provided a measured and comprehensive path forward to local control. So that legislation made the transfer of control contingent on the passage of an amendment to the charter of Baltimore City and ratification by the voters in either the 2022 or 2024 elections. So this is why we're here today. Earlier this summer, the City Council passed legislation establishing the Local Control Charter Amendment ballot measure for voters' approval. So it's important to note that what local control looks like, in other words, how BPD will be governed, is still going to be an open question that is being explored by the Local Control Advisory Board. So we'll have more on that a little later. But just to make sure people understand what we talk about when we say legislative oversight on a local level, just want to give you a sense of what local legislative oversight means. So jurisdictions that have control of their police departments are able to pass legislation on a council level to govern police conduct. And some instances of this are in DC, they set council legislation as it relates to police conduct. In New York City passed legislation as it relates to tactics and use of force. In Philadelphia, legislation was also passed in regards to tactics and use of force, as was in Baltimore County. We've also seen weapons and technology addressed by cities such as Seattle, and data and reporting by jurisdictions such as Montgomery County. So this November, this is why we are here. On November 8th, Baltimore City voters will have the chance to establish the BPD as an agency of the city instead of a state agency. So if you want the city to have control over BPD, as every other jurisdiction in the state has control of their police department, then you would want to vote for the Charter Amendment Question 8H. So let's talk through and be very clear about what Question H means. Again, it means that BPD would become an agency of the city, as opposed to as it sits currently as an agency of the state. Any changes to ensure local council legislative oversight, as I just discussed earlier that other jurisdictions have done, will require additional legislation. Again, that is what the Local Control Advisory Board is researching. But in order for us to get to that point, Question H must be passed first. And it's equally important that we be clear as to what Question H does not mean. So it will not impact the federal consent decree or the city's compliance with the historic statewide police reform that passed in 2021. It also will not lead to increased costs for the city. So again, passing Question H is the first step. The Local Control Advisory Board, as you earlier heard from both of the co-chairs, has been meeting for months to research, study, meet with other jurisdictions and academics to learn about models of local governments. Their work will continue if voters approve moving forward with the Question H Charter Amendment to establish local control. So we plan to have a series of these meetings across the state, across the city, to ensure that everyone has access to meet with us to learn about this. We'll continue to live stream this. But But if you do want to learn more about the Local Control Advisory Board's work, you could do so through their website. And the website includes information not only about our meetings, but also includes copies of an interim report that was released last December that explains our work up until that point. The board will be also releasing a final report in December, so please stay tuned for that. And with that, we will open it up to hear from you. And so we do have some questions here. You know, what consideration should the Local Control Advisory Board make when spreading the word about voting for question H? What questions should we be asking other cities about their police department? What questions or comments do you have for us? And so with that, to open it up, the forum for discussion, questions, I'm going to turn it back over to the chairs.
So we're hoping that there are questions. Let's start with anyone in the room that might have questions. Nope, getting a no. Is anyone monitoring? Do we have questions from? No questions?
So if you're watching this as a rebroadcast or later, please comment and we'll make sure we can answer those questions. But just to close out, I wanted to give some next steps and give our next meeting dates. Like Natasha said, all of our meetings and locations will be listed on our website, but I do have a few meetings that I can announce today. So on September the 7th at 6 p.m., we are planning to host a meeting that will cover the Northern and Western districts. That location is still to be determined, but it will be for the Northern and Northwestern districts. On September 21st at 6 p.m., we are looking to host a meeting that will cover the Western and Central districts. And then on October the 12th at 6 p.m., we are hosting the Eastern and Southeastern districts, and this meeting will be a bilingual session that will be hosted by CASA. So thank you for joining. Please reach out with any questions. I think my co-chair has
Yeah, before we sign off, I think anyone watching should know about the makeup of the committee and that we really represent a wide swath of Baltimore City. The mayor and the city council president are members. Shia and I are the co-chairs, but we have a lot of people that are helping us get this work done, really led by the mayor and the city council president, each of whom have really great members of their teams that are helping us. We also have a number of law enforcement representatives. Commissioner Harrison sits on our board. He has staff that support his work on this board, but we're also populated with a member of the FOP, as well as the Vanguard Justice Society. So it's not just us thinking, oh, this is a great idea, let's just push it through. But don't stop there. We also have members of really influential, important nonprofits. The NAACP has a member, Trey Murphy. The Shia's organization, No Boundaries Coalition, but also community organizations that are very much impacted by policing in the city. Mark Washington is here. He represents Coldstream Homestead Montebello. Lydia Walter Rodriguez from CASA is a member, and she's here in the room. And we have other organizations that are part of this. Of course, my office is the Office of Equity and Civil Rights, and we do the work with the Civilian Review Board. So there's representation there. Whoever did this legislation, Natasha, thank you very much, did a great job making sure that there was no one single voice that's part of this advisory board. So we also have a member from MONSE, which is the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, which is meeting right across the hall right now, talking about policing issues. So the city solicitor is a member of the Local Control Advisory Board. As we were doing our work, we are sort of an advisory board and looking to see what are the impacts of local control on Baltimore City. And what we found, Shia, I think you would agree, through our work, when we brought in the law department, we found that there's no negative impact on the law and no negative impact on the consent decree. And we did one better. We invite Ken Thompson, who's a consent decree the court monitor. We wanted to make sure no negative impact, or if there was a negative impact, what was it? What would we do about it? We brought in Bob Cinnamon from the city's BBMR, the Bureau of Budget and Management Research. We want to know what's the fiscal impact, what's it going to cost Baltimoreans if we do this? What's the cost? And we found no negative impact, no increased cost. So we're doing our work. We're going to keep doing it. We're at the stage now where we're bringing in, I guess we call it subject matter experts from across the country to educate the board about what's happening in other jurisdictions with respect to local control. So help me out, you and Natasha. We've heard from St. Louis, the city and the county of St. Louis. This week on Monday, we heard from someone who has a lot of knowledge about what's happening in Chicago. We have outreach to, I want to say Seattle, Washington, Los Angeles, I want to say Austin, Texas, and we're also interested in hearing what's happening in New York, Manhattan. So we're doing the work, and we would love to hear from anybody out there that has ideas that we should consider. We're very open to hearing from all of you about what you think we should be doing. So,
Thank you.
anything to add?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Thank you, and we look forward to our future session.